First of all, who's Ludwig? It's this guy. He's one of the most famous streamers on the planet. Who am I? I'm a humble game developer who makes quirky little games. But most importantly, who's Ludwig's cat? It's this little lady right here. Her name is Coots, and she's super cute and adorable. But why would anyone make a game for a cat, even a cat as precious as this one? Well, every year Ludwig the streamer hosts a game jam. A game jam is a contest where game developers are given a couple days to make a game with a provided theme. In the case of Ludwig Jam 2023, you're given 10 days to create a game. The top 10 games win $2,000, and Ludwig plays them live on stream to his thousands of adoring fans. And this year, the theme of the jam is the one and only Coots. That all sounds awesome, right? I probably just signed up immediately. But no, sadly I had a couple personal problems. First, I'd never done a game jam before. I'd heard a lot about them and seen some of the cool games that came from them, but I'd always been hesitant to try one for myself. My second personal problem is that because I was busy doing my thing, I didn't find out about this 10-day game jam until day 5. And 5 days is just not a lot of time to make an entire game. On the other hand, this particular jam did have some things going for it. First, 5 days is still more time than a lot of game jams give you. Many of them last for only 2 or 3 days, which is just crazy to me. Secondly, I really like the theme of Ludwig's jam because again, Coots is a freaking adorable Scottish fold snuggle bun fur baby. Third, did I mention there was prize money involved? I mean, I do like making games for free and always worrying about money and finances, but the thought of earning a little dough was also pretty appealing. And lastly, I would have one big advantage. I have no life. So it was decided. I officially entered Ludwig Jam 2023 Coots Edition. Before I could do anything, I had to come up with an idea for the game. So that's it. You'll play as Coots the cat who is trying to start a live stream. Then it was time to start developing the game. My strategy was to go on a charm offensive and make the cutest, most precious tiny little puzzle game ever. But what would be the setting? It made sense that it would take place in Ludwig's house, and because Ludwig is a streamer, we have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. He streams in an office space with a couch in the background and some plants. And we know what the kitchen looks like too because Cutie Cinderella, who's dating Ludwig, bakes and streams from their kitchen. It took a while, but I came up with a basic layout for the stage. I just blocked it all off using simple shapes and lines. So you'll start off as Coots on your cat tower in the kitchen over here. Then Ludwig is streaming on his computer on the other side of the stage. If you get too close to him and he sees you, he will take you back to the cat tower. So you have to figure out a way to get him away from the computer and start your live stream. Now that the level and rules were set, I had to figure out how to take things commonly found in a house and make them into a compelling puzzle that made sense for our objective. Some ideas were more straightforward than others. For instance, in order to get up on the counter, it made sense that you'd have to have a stool. So I made sure that there's only one stool on the stage that the player can push over to the counter. Then I needed to come up with a way to keep Ludwig out of the office room so you can start your stream. That meant that the puzzle would have to involve locking him in the kitchen somehow. After hours of planning and consideration, I came up with a sequence of small puzzles that would achieve all of these things. With the game laid out, it was time to start making art and programming. I knew I wouldn't have time to come up with even halfway decent art on my own and do all the technical stuff. So I called the best artist I know, my niece Osni. Hey Oz, you want to make some art for me?
Yeah!
The next thing I did was start working on Coots' movement. I found a couple free 2D character controllers on the Unity asset store. This one was cool, but I couldn't figure out an easy way to change out the character sprite. So I decided to just use Unity's free controller that comes with their 2D platformer demo. I figured it would be solid and have the best documentation if I ran into problems. Then I made a simple cat sprite and swapped it out for the default player. It looked a little rough, but I knew I would add in the final art and animations later. Speaking of which, let's check in on Osni's progress. She was able to finish the whole design for Ludwig. I knew I'd need him in a couple different poses. This is a design for Cutie Cinderella, and last but not least, here's Coots. I think she did an awesome job on all of them. On day 3, I focused on getting all the puzzles to work. I find it amazing how what seems like simple problems can quickly become much more complex problems when you go to code them. Let's take this very basic stool puzzle as an example. All the player has to do is slide the stool over to the counter so they can use it as a step to jump on. That means I needed to put a collider on it so that the player's collider could push against it. I put another collider next to the couch to prevent the player from pushing the stool in that direction. And there's another collider where the seat of the stool is so the player can jump on top of it. Then there's a a collider as a trigger to stop the stool when it's in the right place. But what if the player decides to only push the stool part of the way when I want them to push it all the way over to the counter? Well, I put yet another collider in the doorway that acts as a trigger so that once the stool hits it, it will reduce the friction on the stool's collider and make the stool glide the rest of the way into place. I coded that logic in a script that's stored inside the stool. I also made it so that once the stool is in place, the player can no longer push it by coding some more logic that removed the pushable collider but kept the collider on the seat. So as you can see, there are tons of considerations to make even when you're adding simple functionality. And that's one reason why game dev takes forever. Anyway, I continued working on the rest of the puzzles. Let's see how Osnee's doing. Excellent. She's gotten most of the animations done and I'm really liking how they're coming together. Next, it was time to import all the finished art into the scene. I think Osnee did a great job with the texturing of the background and the final character animations. And I really like how Coots' walking and jumping animation turned out. Oops, let me flip that around. Like I was saying, I think Coots looks adorable and her little swiping animation is super cute. Then I spent most of the day coding Ludwig's behavior. I made it to where if you get too close to him, he will stop his stream and return you to the cat tower. He'll also reset you if you break a dish and make too much noise in the kitchen. Next, I worked on the ending sequence of the game. What happens is that after you solve the whole puzzle, you're able to open this vent in the kitchen right here. When you jump in, Ludwig comes to check on the commotion. Then you're able to go behind the wall and climb up to this vent over the computer. But if you try to jump straight down to the computer, Ludwig will reset you. What you actually need to do is jump across these shelves over here, which triggers this sequence of events. And now that Ludwig is locked out of the room, Coots can safely start her stream and you've won the game. Excellent. Everything was basically working. Or so I thought. When I actually played the game through, a bunch of weird bugs kept popping up. Like sometimes Coots would randomly teleport around the room, and sometimes the camera would unexpectedly move vertically. Then there were some strange things going on with Ludwig because I forgot to reset his state in certain situations, so he'd just be gone. And sometimes the game would suddenly freeze right before Ludwig put you back on the cat tower. Then other times, Coots would freak out after she landed on the counter. It seemed like as soon as I fixed one thing, another thing would pop up, or I realized I completely forgot to do something else. But after trial and error and going back through the code line by line, I got most of the problems ironed out. With about an hour left before the deadline, I didn't have time to add sound to the game, but I felt confident that everything else was working well enough. So I made one last build of the game, gave it a quick playthrough, and sent in my submission to my first ever game jam. It was done. It was over. I had never coded so much in my life, but it felt good and I was proud that we finished an entire game in 5 days. All in all, there ended up being about 150 games submitted, and the way this jam works is you have 2 days to play through the games and vote on them. These are some cool ones that I came across. In Coots in Boots, you fight against Ludwig's henchmen in a Puss in Boots styled fighting game. It was actually really fun and satisfying to defeat all the bosses. The controls are really nice and the art turned out great. In Coots TV, you have to meow, hiss, and purr into a microphone to complete quirky mini games. The game is really polished and silly and feels like a complete little experience. I think the devs did a really good job of using the theme in an interesting way. In Scatter Paws, you play as a rambunctious and wild Coots who has to tear up as much furniture as possible in a given amount of time. The controls are intentionally really wacky and the music and visuals are super cute. I had a lot of fun playing this one. There were also a couple streamers from Ludwig's community who played our game, and it was really fun to get some feedback and see some ways I could improve the experience. Probably the biggest thing is that they thought the game should have sound, which I agreed with and I have since added to the game. After 2 days, the window for playing and rating the games closed, and these were the results for our game. Not too bad. We got top 5 for the theme category, which I was pretty happy with. And now that the community has voted, the judges will pick their 10 favorite games for Ludwig to play. And as the making of this video, I don't know if Ludwig will end up playing our game. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. But either way, I felt it was a successful project and I had a really great time making it. If you'd like to try the game out and see if you can solve the whole puzzle yourself, there's a link in the description along with a link to all the other games. Don't forget to subscribe and you can join my Discord server if you want to be part of my game dev community. I'll see everyone in the next one.